Hello everyone, I'm Bernie. You saw me at the last panel. I'm here again. You're welcome. Welcome back to the Ghost River Triangle Convention, our very, very first Ghost River Triangle Convention. Right now, today, we have a podcast panel with some of the best podcasts on the internet right now. Arguably ever. Arguably ever. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce Anne Hicks Bleeker from the Why Not podcast,
Hey, hi, thanks for having us.
Kevin Backelder from Tales of the Black Badge,
Hey, gang. No pressure, Bernie, with that intro. Thank you.
Yeah, right.
It's all true. I never say anything that isn't true.
Oh, okay.
Kat Crimmins from She Nerds Out podcast,
Hello.
and Tayvia Brownmiller and Bonnie Chi from Earper Feels podcast.
Hey guys. Yeah, those are some bold comments there, Barney, considering no one's heard our podcast.
Yeah, I'm just like, what?
You know what? I believe all of you can live up to that introduction. Truly.
Well, we appreciate the vote of confidence.
Yes.
We hope that everyone is just as enticed with it as we are once we get it out there.
Yeah. So, I just want to start off going down the line. Initial thoughts on last night's episode, and then we'll hop into everything to do with podcasts.
What episode are you talking about?
Which show are we talking about?
Hey, wait, what?
It was
That's
on?
a good question.
There was an
was that-
episode last night?
That was last night?
I think NHL was trending in Canada, right?
Yeah. Yes, I'm talking about the NHL game, actually.
Yeah.
That's very on brand for the Canadians. I'm not surprised.
Amazing, fun, crazy, insane.
Chaos.
Yes,
Like beautiful chaos.
yes.
5 stars would recommend to a friend.
Fantastic.
Quintessential Earp.
Absolutely.
It's a shame they're all so unattractive.
Too bad. Should look into that.
Yeah.
It was
Really.
brilliant.
I didn't
love
know
the
glitter
extra-
could come through the television.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's all over my living room.
But I think the biggest takeaway is that we got news about Calamity Jane, but I don't think she's gone. Hashtag bring Calamity home. Shout out to my co-host Tara. I don't think we've seen the last of Calamity Jane. So let's just relax.
Fingers are crossed. Calamity Jane is my favorite character, and deserves the world, in my opinion. So let's jump right in. Kevin, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the realities of doing a podcast. You are known throughout the entire Earper fandom, and I think folks would like to hear the realities of it.
Well, the thing, and I think everybody here on the panel, whether new or someone who's been doing it for a while, has different views on it. That's one of the wonderful things about podcasts. Everybody, even if there's a bunch of us doing it on the same topic, in this case, or everybody's got a slightly different take. And that, as a listener, is what can make things really fresh. So, one of the things when you're looking at doing one of these is that you need to kind of see, what makes it you. You don't have to copy another format. You don't have to do it either similar or radically different than someone else. Because, this is going to turn into a good amount of work. Podcasting is a lot of time commitment, Sure, it's fun to watch episodes, but, you got to watch them to make notes. And you got to set aside time to record, time to edit, create blog posts, do social media aspects, promote, interact with your listeners. These are all things that can be fun, but it's also a big commitment. So make sure whatever you're going to do one on is something that you have a ton of passion about, because you're going to spend a lot of time kind of doing it. So a lot of folks will ask, certainly, hey, I'm interested in doing one on this. Just make sure it's something you're going to love and love in all aspects as you're doing it. Because you don't want to, put a lot of time into trying to start it and then sputter out after an episode or two when you go, oh, I didn't realize I'd be putting all this time in. So those are some of the things, just look internally, find the thing that's going to really get you jazzed to talk about something. And, once you do, that ability to connect with an audience, find other passionate people who appreciate what you're doing and want to give you feedback on it, man, that is just a high that you cannot describe.
Well said.
Absolutely. I think for a lot of anyone who creates things within the Erper community, it all stems from passion. And that there's definitely no lacking passion in this group of individuals. Tayvia and Bonnie, I'm curious, starting a podcast from scratch, what is that like?
Um, well, okay, it's been a process. Let's just start there. You know, the initial idea was actually like, Bonnie actually approached me about kind of co-hosting this potential podcast, and we went through like a couple of different models of like how we wanted to present our ideas, and we reached out to other fellow Erpers that we knew were podcasters. Like, Kevin actually helped us by giving us some starting tips, and then Kimmy and Sheila Amato from Forever Fangirls have been giving us some tips. But yeah, well, it took us a minute to realize like what Kevin was talking about, like how much time was going to go into this. And you really just have to commit to it. If you're going to do it, you have to commit to it, because otherwise it's not going to go anywhere. I don't know, Bonnie.
Yeah, like as academics and researchers at heart, Tavy and I actually spent more time prepping for the notes and the all the stuff in the background before we actually got to a point where we were able to record anything. And you should see our Google Drive. But like starting from scratch, it was a lot of like, what are we getting ourselves into? Really wanting, we listened to a lot of different podcasts to see what worked. And very similar to what Kevin was saying, there's a lot of different podcasts out there. And not only do you want to find something that you're passionate about, you also want to find something that isn't already being done again and again and again. Otherwise, it gets repetitive, right? And so, like the idea had been kind of percolating in my mind for quite a while. If any of you are fans of Harry Potter, there's a podcast called Harry Potter and the Sacred Text, which is where Erper Field's podcast, the idea kind of originated from. So I think we had, yeah, it was, you'll have to listen to find out how things originated, but like we really just dove into it.
Yeah. And then once we actually started like talking to some of our friends about what we wanted to do, we were getting so much support. Like I feel like that's a really important part, is having a support system that's gonna, keep encouraging you to, put your voice out there. Cause this, I've never done anything like this before, and I don't know if anyone's actually gonna care what I have to say about this show, but you know what? We care. And that's what we want people to see, is how much of a passion project this has been for us. I mean, lucky for us, we have kind of we have a built-in kind of focus group too, to kind of help us mull around ideas. You guys might have seen them on Twitter a lot. It's the Erper Murder Brunch crew.
Shout out.
So shout out to EMBC, because a lot of what we've put together we couldn't have done without them. That's for sure. And another friend of ours who's actually taken on the role as our producer, Cass, she's part of that group with us, and she's essentially become part of the Erper Fields team. That way she can handle the editing and all of that side of it, so that we're able to kind of split the amount of time that's going into this, which is really nice too.
Otherwise, like once you look at it, it can get really overwhelming really quickly. And then you just kind of like, I think I'm gonna back away slowly into the hedges and then maybe nothing ever happens or comes of it, right? And so like looking at the bigger picture, but also breaking it down and delegating and playing on everyone's strengths has made it more reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yeah, again, like with any artistic journey, I think it's all about the follow through. A lot of projects fall apart. I've had so many projects just like fall to the wayside. But it's about commitment and seeing it through. And once again, it just like it all comes back to passion.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Anne, I'm curious how you go about choosing a topic and a co-host for podcasts.
Gotcha. well, a little bit about how I got into podcasting. I was really inspired. Um, I'm a big fan of true crime, and I got really addicted to a podcast called My Favorite Murder. And not only did I love the stories, of the different crimes that have been committed, but one of my favorite parts is when the hosts just chit chat in the beginning of it. And I felt a real sense of like, whenever I was listening to the podcast, I felt like I was hanging out with friends of mine. So I'd go about my day and maybe nobody else was at home, but I didn't feel like I was at home alone because I felt like I was in the middle of this conversation with some good friends, whether I was contributing to it or not. I was, in that conversation. And I just really liked the way that made me feel. So I started doing a podcast with my friend Casey. And our first podcast we did a little over a year and a half ago, and it's called Etc. We're ex girlfriends who remained friends. And it was just a chit chat conversation podcast. And it was really just an excuse for me to be able to spend more time with my friend. It guaranteed that we would at least talk to each other for an hour every week. Um, and then came Wynonna Earp, and I got hooked on this show just like we all did. And I would talk to her about it when we were doing the other podcast. And the first 15 minutes of our episode would always be me just saying like, did you watch this show? I told you to watch the show. When are you going to watch the show? And she's like, no, I don't have time. I'm too busy. Um, and then finally she just gave in and gave up and was like, okay, I'll watch the show, but are there any podcasts about this show, Wynonna Earp? And I was like, yeah, there's a handful of them. And she initially she was like, oh well, then never mind. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? She's like, well, what if I watch it and we turn it into a podcast? And I don't know, I'm a fast person, and I just jump into things. So I was like, within, you know 2 hours we had a logo. We were like, we were set up. We were having a website, and she's like, oh, okay, well, I guess we're doing this. Um, so for me it was a no-brainer because Casey and I were good friends, and we're those kinds of friends who don't need to see each other in order to be able to have a great conversation, right? We just pick up where we left off. And I think that's something that is important depending on the type of podcast you're going to have. If you want something that flows easily, doesn't seem like a lot of work, you want some kind of chemistry with your co-host. There are podcasts where it's just one person, and that's some of those people do great at that. I can't do that. I can't just sit and talk to myself. So that's something that I think is important, the chemistry and just being able to bounce back and forth with each other. Um, what was the other question?
I mean, you covered it. It was about finding a co-host and finding a topic. Um, yeah. I do have a follow-up question.
Mhm.
Why not?
Why the name? Why not?
No, I know the name. Why not? But like, in terms of focus on the podcast.
Well, we don't focus on the why not relationship. So it's really like a big play on the whole situation where Casey and I are kind of like the Winona and Hot. So we've got that friendship there, and then it was also a play on, well, why not start a podcast? And so it just, and for me, like, things come quickly. So it was like, yeah, that's the name of our podcast. It's Why Not? Like, why not start a podcast? Plus, she didn't know about the why not relationship when I chose the name. Um, so it was like, that was fun for me too, because there's so many things she doesn't know about. Um, and so it was like, oh yeah, this is another fun thing. Like, she doesn't even know what our logo means yet because she hasn't seen the beanie and she hasn't seen Peacemaker as a sword. So I'm kind of a masochist, and those are the types of things I just love to torture her with.
Brilliant. Throwing it over to Kat for a second. So with podcasting comes the ideas, but also there's the technical aspect of equipment and audio gear. I'm curious, like, what you use, what you would recommend for other folks to use if they're looking to start a podcast of their own.
Sure. I would say if you're starting out and you kind of want to dabble a bit, I would do a couple practice runs. And the good news is you don't have to spend a lot of money to do that. I mean, the headset that I'm using now, I don't use this during recording, but if you don't have a microphone, a USB or XLR mic, this is a headphone and mic in one. This mic is great. So you don't have to spend money on that. So that's good. Zoom works as a recorder, essentially. So it actually records separate audio tracks. I'm not sponsored by Zoom, but if you don't want to spend the money on a digital recorder, or if you're going to do mostly remote podcasting, I mean, back in the old days, my co-host and I, Tara and Wendy, we would sit in the same room together. So I have a digital recorder, but we don't do that anymore. So Zoom is great, and you can see each other, which is super important. And then you need to edit, and it's, there's free options available for that. There's Audacity, it's a free software you can use. GarageBand, which is like an app, it's an Apple app that comes with almost every Apple device now. So you don't have to spend a ton of money. And I would just kind of play around with that before you spend money, because don't worry, if you have money to spend, you can do it spending it on gear. And boy, have I done that. I'm a bit of a gearhead, so when I get into something, I really get into it, as you can see. I have visual aids. I use a vocal mic. It's a Shure SM48. It's like a $40 mic. This thing's great. I've used it for 2 years. Sounds amazing. I love. I'm into tone. It's really important to me how we sound. So if you're serious about it and you wanna take that next step, buy a decent microphone. So I use this. It's an XLR mic. My co-hosts, Tara and Wendy, they used a USB and XLR mic. It can be used as both. Super versatile. So when we go back to being in the same room together, we can use it that way. But you can also use it online. And I use a digital recorder. It's a little portable guy. It's got a lot of power. You can take it on the go, but you can use this as your primary recorder. And what's important is that you have separate tracks, right? So all of us here, if we were to record this session, each of us would have our own audio track. You dump that into your editing software, and that way you can kind of control who's talking and who's not, if somebody coughs, that kind of thing. And Zoom does that too. So Zoom gives you individual audio tracks, which is so cool. It's a, for a free thing. I mean, it's 40 minutes for free, right? But you really don't have to spend a lot of money to figure out if you want to do this. But if you do want to spend the money, DM me. I can tell you the ridiculous amount of gear that I have. I bought something I haven't even used yet because we can't be in the same room together. Like there's plenty of ways to spend money on podcasting. And editing, again, Audacity is for free. I use a Logic Pro just because a buddy of mine's an audio engineer. He taught me how to edit on that software, so it just makes sense. And if I have questions at 12 o'clock at night and I'm like, dude, I have to upload in like 20 minutes. What have I done? He can talk me through it. But you don't have to spend money if you don't want to. But the more money you spend, the higher quality your sound quality audio you're going to get, and that's important to me. And so I've spent money on that. So
fantastic. As a fellow audio nerd myself, I loved everything you just said. And right now what I want to do is move on to some questions that we got on Twitter for all of you. We can go down the line, and everyone can give an answer. You don't have to. If you want to, it's here. Your choice. Though I'm assuming because you're all podcasters here, you'll probably have something to say. So first question is, what's your favorite part of podcasting? Kevin, if you want to kick it off.
Well, and I mentioned it a little bit, excuse me, earlier. The reality side of it is that ability to connect with folks from anywhere in the world is just, for me, mind blowing. I mean, I'm someone who grew up being a fan of, excuse me, sci-fi and fantasy TV shows. There was no one around me, at my age, there wasn't the internet, there wasn't any of that stuff. So I was always a little bit of a fan of things kind of on my own. So when the idea of podcasting came around and I got involved in it, um, just to be myself, to find some other friends, and be able to, a bit as Ann said, just to be able to spend time with a friend, talking up things. The other primary podcast I do, Tuning into Sci-Fi TV, is myself and two friends I've known for about 15 years, Brent and Wendy, and we would talk about sci-fi and all the different sci-fi and fantasy shows. We just said let's record it. So it's a great way for us every week just to get together and do that, and to have that connect with other people. And folks, send in emails or voice comments and say, "Oh, I was thinking the same thing about that show," or "No, I think you're totally wrong, and here's why." We're all, in a positive kind of way. Um, I can't explain how amazing that is. And as we all know, certainly here in the Earper family, to be able to connect with those folks and have them agree or disagree or give you an insight you hadn't thought of. I mean, that's a lot of the fun this morning. For folks that have listened to our podcast that we did for last night's episode is, "Oh, well, I thought this and that." I'm like, "Never thought of that. That's great. You've now filled in something I didn't think of." So yeah, that connection side of it, man, it's like a drug in a good way. I mean, it makes all of the time spent editing and doing some other things that are the work side of podcasting so worth it.
Thank you for sharing that. It's incredible. Um, Bonnie and Tavia, what about you? What's your favorite part of podcasting?
Um, honestly, I think for aside from like getting to just talk, because anyone that knows me or is close to me, I like to talk. So there's that. But especially about things that I'm really passionate about. I will go on for hours about something that I love. And Wynonna Earp is one of those things. So when Bonnie had first approached me about potentially putting a podcast together, I didn't hesitate. I was like, yes, let's do it. And then I mean, it's just, getting to, being a part of the fandom is so amazing. I haven't actually been a part of it for very long because I only discovered the show around this time last year. So getting to be a part of the fandom and then being able to get this deep into the fandom with just discussing the different aspects of the show with someone else that thoroughly enjoys it as much as you do is huge. So it's kind of hitting on the same point that Kevin was talking about, like just getting to interact with other Earpers and a fellow Earper such as Bonnie. It's fantastic because again, I am a super nerd, and where I'm from, where I was growing up, there weren't a ton of people that were into the sci-fi fantasy genre. So I would be nerding out in my room by myself with my books and my TV shows, and I'm pretty sure my parents thought there was something wrong with me for most of the time, but it's fine. Weird is good, right? I mean, we're all weird in some way, and that's fantastic. So the fact that I get to express that and be supported while expressing that, that's huge.
To really, echo what Kevin and Tavia are saying, like it really comes down to that connection and the community. I feel like similar to Tavia, I found Wynonna Earp during the end of grad school, and it was like the light at the end of the tunnel that thankfully was not a train. And like I felt like it really got me through. And the fandom, and like I say fandom, but it's more like a famdom because it's like a found family. And when COVID hit, suddenly there wasn't that like personal, like in-person connection anymore. And even going back to what Anne was saying a little earlier, being able to have time set aside where we just interact with somebody and talk about something and connect and be yourself without worry of whatever else is going on. I know, like it can be a lot to put yourself out there, right? It's very vulnerable, it's very scary. And the great part about podcasting is blah, 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 blah. Okay, can we redo that? And then you get to redo it. You don't get to really do that in real life. So that's kind of like a sweet spot of it. So yeah.
Awesome. Anne, how about you?
Oh, yeah, you guys have mentioned grad school, and I also went to grad school, and I'm a lifelong learner, and I think one of the weird things I love about podcasting is that I can measure the metrics and I can see how like I'm a person who's always gotten a grade in my life. So like feedback for me is my jam. Like getting feedback from Twitter from listeners saying, oh my gosh, I just left a review, or I loved when, Casey said this. And just being able to look at like the analytics and see the growth and the progress, um, statistics and that kind of like, I love that part. And so that's one thing I didn't realize that I would love, but I absolutely love it. And I love talking with, other podcasters who like some of those same things. Like Kat and I will bounce things off of each other a lot, and I'll be like, oh my god, like, did you see this happen? Did Kevin and both Kat have been like super helpful for me starting out this podcast. When I started out the first podcast, it was just experimental, and I think our family was like the only people who listened to it, and we would get like 45 downloads a week, and we were like, oh my god, there's actually people listening. So when we did this one again, Casey was just thinking like, well, nobody's going to listen to this, right? And I was like, no, I'm pretty sure people are going to listen to this one. Like, we already have, there's a niche there, and there's an audience. And so when we see the comments roll in and the ratings on iTunes and stuff, Casey just like loses her mind every single time. And I love that too, because I love pleasing people. So hearing that someone's laughing or feeling great about something, and that making people laugh is my jam too. So that's like knowing that I've brought a smile to someone's face. I love that. And I think maybe a little bit of a narcissist too. So exactly, Kat gets it. I don't mind listening to my own podcast here and there. So I pretty much love everything about it. If I could quit my job and do this, you may not know this, but you don't get paid to podcast unless you're one of the big ones. And Kat had mentioned you don't have to spend money. There is some money you do have to spend, because you do have to get your feed out there, and that's something you do have to pay for. If you want a website, you're probably gonna have to pay for that. So there are monthly subscription dues that we need to pay to get it out there. And it's like a hobby. But if I could do this for a living, I would totally do this for a living. It's very addicting, I think. So.
Absolutely. And I just want to share that everyone in the chat is showering all of you with love. There is one comment that I wanted to read to make sure everyone here heard. And listening to you all talk about the belonging and the sharing and the connection is beautiful. That is everything. And also what you bring to community by bringing that connection to the fandom is amazing. I just wanted to share that with you all, because I could not.
Very nice.
Whatever that is, you stop right now and make me cry.
Yes,
We don't do that here.
Very nice.
Got a tree in my eye.
See,
It's
right?
fine.
It's pollen. It's pollen.
And then Kat, what's your favorite part about podcasting?
I wish I had an original answer, but I don't. So I'm gonna jump into my version of what everyone has just said. And yes, it's appointment. It's every week that I know I'm gonna hang out with my friends, Tara and Wendy. We're gonna have a good time. We talk about this stuff anyway, so we might as well share it with the world. So that's always great, and especially this last year to still have that personal connection with somebody, even remotely, has been important. But then to hear that you're connecting with people, that people are listening, and that they are podcasting and radio, the medium of it, these voices are in your head. It's a very intimate experience. And so kind of what Anne was saying, I love My Favorite Murder as well, and I feel like those two women are my best friends. Like, I'm just going to hang out with some friends, and that's kind of what I wanted She Nerds Out to feel like too. And so we've gotten some emails, especially during COVID, where people are like, you guys are my friends, like I get to hang out with nerds, and I don't have that in my daily life. And I can't tell you what that means. When we first started getting emails that people were listening and enjoying, that's amazing. And then to hear people really, coming to us for that kind of friend interaction, that makes us feel so good. And if you're a fan of a podcast and you listen every week, to just give let them know that you're listening, even if it's just a review, if it's a rating or an email. Just shoot an email. It will make their day, I promise you. To get feedback from people listening, it means everything. It's the fuel that kind of keeps us going. It's like, kind of is like a little high every time we get interact, because people are busy. It's a bit, your day is busy, there's stress, there's stuff going on. But to take a moment just to let us know that you're out there and you're listening and enjoying it, it just means the world to us. So yeah, it's the human connection. I think that's absolutely my favorite part of doing this.
Yeah, there's like something to be said. It's like there's that moment like right before you hit load where you're just like, here it goes, and then you just like kind of you sit back and you wait. Yeah, it's a great feeling just waiting for to see like what's going to hit with someone. um, do they disagree with this point? Did they love this point? The things that you thought were going to be like a total hit, and then it's like they're gravitating on something else. But it's so vulnerable too. It's like yes, you can edit it, but there's still going to be stuff out there that you put out there. So every now and then you'll get something where it's like, oh, you misspoke there. You totally pronounced that word wrong. And it's like, yeah, but if I would have taken it out, it would have sounded stupid because there would have been a huge gap between when they said that and when they said that. So I'm always like, yeah, oh, talk to me when you have a podcast and you've got your voice out there. But luckily, I've seen so little of that and just so much more of the like, we love listening to you. I mean, people just like listening to Casey laugh, which is funny. I have reels. Someone had asked, what do you do with the stuff you don't put out there? Yeah, you used to edit more. And apparently they just like to hear all the nonsense that Casey says. So it's making my job a little easier. But yeah, with the stuff that I've cut out, or just, Casey gagging, watching a gross scene, or laughing a little too hard at something, like I save all that. I would just make a reel at the end of this thing. It would just be like 2 hours long. Sound effects.
I'm curious what, because that was going to be my next question, is what you do with things that don't make it into the podcast. Does anyone have like
Just have drives full of things.
Yeah,
it's like what Bonnie mentioned was you guys should see our the Dropbox that we share for the podcast, because there's so much content there. Because we'll sit and record for, I don't know, I think one of our longest recording sessions ended up being like 3 hours.
We've learned not to start recording right when we jump on, because the first 45 to 60 minutes is just catching up on life, like, and then it's like, oh wait, I don't think people really care about this. Like people don't care about like the skip the dishes guy getting lost trying to get to my house again, or the chainsaw that's going
Or
off,
the
right?
experiment that nearly blew up in my lab. No, I'm just kidding. I never put myself in a position for things to explode. A bottle did almost explode in a microwave once, but that's it. But yeah, so what we try to do and what we've talked about when we launch is, we'll have the content for the podcast episode, and then we're thinking about launching a YouTube channel alongside that, where we can drop some of like our bloopers or like some of the extra stuff, just if anybody is actually interested in watching Bonnie and I essentially ramble on for hours, because that's what it turns into.
Yeah, you don't hear it, but during specific episodes, like 402 or 109 or whatever, there's like a lot of flailing and
Can
like
confirm.
and yeah. So.
And I know for me too, it can depend on whether it's a podcast, an episode you're doing with your regular co-hosts like Bonnie and I. we're coming up on our 200th episode, so we know each other's rhythm and pattern and talk, and a couple of our recent episodes, there was nothing that was taken out. I mean, it was literally start, record, end, boom. Sometimes there are things in real life, someone interrupts you. We're not all here in corporate recording studios. The family's around, the kids are around. So sometimes some of that has to go. But then also the other part is also if you are doing a podcast where you get a chance to interview actors or other people, what can come out can depend on what they might say. We want them to be comfortable. We don't want them to feel like we're going out live. So they have to be cautious about what they say. So we tell them we will edit anything out. If you start talking and realize, oops, spoiler or whatever, it might come out. So there have definitely been some things over the years, certainly with the talking to the Earp cast, that it has to be put aside, or now isn't the time for that to come out. I mean, a couple of quick items folks get a chuckle out of is the very first time we interviewed Tim Rozon back in season 1. I had a question because I knew he was a big comic book nerd, to mention that, oh, hey, San Diego Comic-Con's coming up. And there hadn't been any announcement about Wynonna Earp being there. So when I just said, I know you love cons, Tim blurted out, have you heard? I'm so excited. Earpcast is going to be there. Pause. Maybe I shouldn't have told you that yet. So I literally had to put that aside and reach out to Emily to go, is it okay to break this news, or can we take it out? So, there might be things, like that. And the other thing folks will appreciate is when we had the season where Mel was pregnant, we had gone to visit the set, so we knew months ahead of time. So those podcasts that we did from that point until it was released on the show, I re-listened to every of our final edits like 3 times, making sure there wasn't anything that an Earper could pick up on that was just a word here or there. In our interview with Kat, she was joking when we talked about how great the show is. She was like, oh yeah, we can go from just absolute, heart-wrenching stuff to jokes about abortion. And I went, oh, no, that's coming out. I am not leaving that in, because there's going to be a smart Earper out there who goes, abortion? Why would you bring up abortion? Oh, someone's pregnant. What's going on? So sometimes you never know where things might go, but it's always in the interest, much like you ladies were saying, of, yeah, we have a lot of fun, but sometimes you do want to condense it down to what folks will find entertaining if they're not your best buds. So there's, that's what happens over the course of time too.
And, to your point, Kevin, yes, when you talk, especially when you have guests on, we've had to hold some stuff back and release it at a later time, or taking out something. It's like, I don't think they really meant to say that, or that's maybe an off-color joke. No abortion jokes, but still. But also, it might not sound like it, but She Nerds Out is pretty structured. We have we know what we're going to talk about. We have topics, and we don't really the stuff that we edit out. It's ums and stutters and oh, hold on, let me look that up kind of stuff. So we don't really have any bloopers. If there's something funny that happens during the course, I'll usually put it as a tag at the very end. So you listen to the very end of the podcast, we'll put a cute little tag at the end of somebody saying something funny or something. But yeah, we don't really have a blooper reel, so to speak. But the magic of editing, it's just, as much as I stumble during the podcast, I take out so much more of that. You have no idea. I barely get a sentence out on the podcast. So.
Have you guys ever, like, I did a whole edit one time, and I had this chunk of audio that was still attached at the end, but there was a space gap, and I didn't know it was there, and I published it, and it was like midnight, and it was just a ton of BS, like not great stuff. And luckily someone heard it right away and was like, I don't think you meant to like have that on the end. And I was like, what are you talking about? And I looked, and there was like a minute gap of air, and then this stuff that should never have been there. And I was like, unpublished. So like one person got it, and I was like, oh my gosh, thank gosh I had that one person. Shout out to Alice, you like saved the day that day. Yeah, so things like that. You're some things you script, some things you don't, some things you mean to do, some you don't. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
And with that, we are actually out of time. I want to thank every single one of you again for joining me. It has been a pleasure listening to you all talk about your passion for podcasting and for Wynonna Earp. And I can tell you that everyone in the chat is also very, very grateful for each and every single one of you.
We're grateful that we got to be here.
Yes.
And if you guys have just a quick second, Bonnie and I have an announcement that we're aiming to launch on April 14th. So you'll be able to get the first few episodes of Erper Fields starting April 14th. We chose that date because that lines up with just about right after when the last episode of season 4 is available. And I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I'm gonna be doing a major rewatch, once all of it's available. So, you could take this rewatch journey with us and listen to the podcast. And once the episodes drop, we would love feedback. We all touched on that today. Just let us know your thoughts. Yeah, we're looking forward to it and sharing it with you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much. You're
Thank you, Bernie. Thank you.
Thanks, Bernie,
Thank
for
Thank
the
you.
invite.
This was a great time
This
and
is
a
fantastic.
fun
Yeah.
opportunity. Thanks for opening it up to us.
absolutely. Everyone, stick around. We have the cast panel coming up at 1 p.m. and I promise you, you will not want to miss it. All right. Thanks again, everyone.
Take care, gang.
Bye.